What time is it? It's time for another Every Other Wednesday.
As we go ahead and get started, you know what that means, right?
The music.
Cue the music.
What time is it? It's time for another Every Other Wednesday.
My favorite part. I'll see you. Nice being here.
Okay, great. Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to Every Other Wednesday. My name is Richard Haddon, and I'm in Jacksonville, Florida. I'm an author and speaker, the author of 4 books on leadership and employee engagement, and a 5th book, which I have not started yet, but really need to. I'm going to come back in just a minute and introduce our guest, but let me turn it over right now to Michael Kerr.
Hey everyone, Michael Kerr here, coming to you as normally from the beautiful, spectacular Canadian Rockies in Canmore, Alberta. It is, here's the stamp code, July 27th, 2022. And I speak about inspiring workplace cultures, inspiring leadership, and businesses that leverage their human resources to drive outrageous results. And I'm the author of 20 books, 12 have yet to be written. Just, using Richard's logic there.
Okay.
And over to you, Mr. Jeffrey Tobe.
Well, good morning, guys. I guess unusually, I'm not in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania today. I'm in my native country. I'm in Vancouver, Canada. As soon as we finish this today, I am jumping on a plane on my way to Whitehorse, Yukon, a 10-day rafting trip with my wife, who is sitting in the other room in panic right now. So it should be interesting. Celebrating our 40th anniversary. We're not sure if we'll make it to 41, but 40's been great. So.
All right, great, excellent. Very good, and it is my pleasure. We should say that Sanjay Nath is at the door, like trying to get in. I'm getting texts from him saying that he can't get in for some reason. So I don't know why that is happening. I think maybe somebody has taken over Zoom if we can't do our chats and if Sanjay can't get in, but we're going to roll ahead.
There's a cyber bouncer. I have this image of keeping
Since
Sanjay.
we have new people, can we re-announce that chat is disabled? We don't know why. So please, any comments or anything, just put in the question and answer box. And Carol, yes, it bodes well that our guest finds us all amusing. Great segue, Richard.
Okay, great. Thank you. So speaking of our guest who finds us all amusing, I'd like to introduce to everyone my friend, Dr. Donnie Horner. Donnie and I met probably, Donnie, 18 years ago, I think it was. And Donnie was at the time involved with Jacksonville University, my undergraduate alma mater. And I also taught there for a few years. And Donnie invited me to come in and speak for an event that was happening at JU. But Dr. Donnie Horner has been all kinds of things, and I'm going to let him explain a little bit of that. But where I know him from is from Jacksonville University, and he was on the faculty and the administration of Jacksonville University. He is the Provost Emeritus, which means he used to be the Provost at Jacksonville University.
Just the old guy Provost.
Okay. And just to show his how diverse and eclectic his skills are, he was also the athletic director at Jacksonville University. And when I was telling someone recently, just in the last week or two, that Donnie Horner was going to be our guest on Every Other Wednesday, they said, "Oh, is that the Donnie Horner who was the provost at Jacksonville University, or was it the one who was an athletic director at Jacksonville University, or is it Donnie?" Or is it the Donnie Horner who was the first education commissioner for the city of Jacksonville? And I said it was all of the above. So we're going to learn today from Donnie Horner, who is now doing, among other things, work with an organization called Higher Echelon, and it's all about culture. And so to our friends on Every Other Wednesday, please meet Dr. Donnie Horner. Welcome, Donnie.
Welcome.
Great to be here. I love the vibe.
You didn't mention the part about working with past presidents of the United
Well, I was going to ask him to do that. If he doesn't, I'm going to fill in. So my first question for you, Donnie, is besides your involvement at Jacksonville University, which I have firsthand knowledge of, and with the city of Jacksonville, what kind of brought you to where you are today?
Yeah, thanks for having me, and I appreciate the opportunity to be on. Honored to be here, really. And it's just serendipity is what got me here. I had no plan. I had great parents. I come from a poor steel town in Pennsylvania. Don't get me wrong, we had plenty to eat and had a roof over our head, but torn, tattered clothes. The whole family worked in mills, and I worked in a mill when I was 14, so I knew what that gig was like. And my dad said to me, he said, "Look, I want you to go down and get paid for shoveling coal into the open hearth." So I did that a little bit, and after about a week, my dad says, "How do you like it?" I said, "Man, I don't know that I'm up to this." And he said, "I'll tell you what, you go to college, you commit to going to college right now, and you don't have to go back." And I said to myself, I have no idea in God's name what college is, but it's got to be better than this. So it was a good exchange. And then when I had an opportunity to go to college, I ended up going to the military academy at West Point. I was a pretty good football player and in high school. And so before I leave, my parents basically said, we got two bits of advice for you. Volunteer for nothing unless it's education. If it's education or training, take it all. Don't even ask what it's about, just take it. So good advice it turned out to be. So, got to the academy, played a little football when I was there, and challenged, and enjoyed it, hated it, love-hate relationship kind of thing. Get out to the Army, and in those days, the world was different. That was 81, and that institution, as big and monstrous as it is, also came with a lot of educational opportunity. So, the reward for good work is more good work. So, you're a company, or I should say a platoon leader or a company XO, and that's XO's second in command of a company. My first company was 326 people in Virginia. Army calls me one day, "How'd you like to go get a grad degree at MIT?" Sure. Remember what my parents told me. Don't even ask. Just say yes.
Okay, yeah.
And of course, my parents, I tell this story, it's absolutely true. So I get accepted to MIT. I felt pretty good about it, going to get a transportation systems degree and essentially a civil engineering degree. And so I tell my mom, and she says, "Well, I guess you just couldn't get into Harvard." And so, be that as it may, you go do good work someplace, and had surrounded by great people there. I met Edgar Schein there.
Yeah, I want to talk with you about that. That's cool that you met him.
Yeah, and so I had no idea what organizational culture was until I met Professor Schein, and God bless him, he's 98 years old now. And I really wasn't sure that's what I wanted to do with my life. I'm 64. I still don't know what I want to be when I grow up. Graduate from there, the Army sends me to the Lockheed Martin Skunk Works, and creative place, unusual place, probably the most creative, dynamic place I've ever been. And so, you fast forward through all of that, and I do normal Army things. I'm a company commander in Panama during the Noriega gig. There was a lead up to that effort called Operation Nimrod Dancer. It was, at the time, it was classified, but you can Google it now, Nimrod Dancer, you can see what it was. So I'm finishing up that, and they call and say, "How'd you like to go to a PhD at Stanford?" I said, "Yeah, Stanford's a good thing. PhD is a good thing. Yeah, I'll go." So they send me for a sociology degree, and I get field exams in org behavior and social psych, which I loved. Had never really studied it, not really. And so then, then you go be a professor at West Point. And while I'm there, again, the reward for good work's more good work. And, right about September of October of 92, think about 92, there's an election year, you know what I mean? Mr. Bush 1 was the president, the incumbent. He was running against a guy named Ross Perot and Bill Clinton. And about, this is a no kidding, September, October, young Major Horner, Dr. Horner gets called to the superintendent's office. And that suit was, that's university president in English or in Canadian. And he said, "Hey, look, we know, we've been told, Department of Defense knows that Mr. Clinton's going to win this election. He's already advised us the first thing he's going to do is integrate the military, open integration of gays and lesbians. You're the Army rep. You're the Army expert for that." And I'm like, "Are you sure you got the right guy?" I have no idea about any of that. So course, Mr. Clinton gets elected. I go to work for Bill Clinton as the Army's rep on Don't Ask, Don't Tell. They lowered their standards to let me, work as part of that process. And, I think the theme for Horner is just serendipity, good luck, bumping into good people. If there's a lesson for anybody, and I tell kids that I mentor this all the time, surround yourself with good people.
Yeah.
And realize you're not that good. You're good. It's better to be humble and realize what you don't know and ask a lot of stupid questions. That way you learn a lot.
So Donnie, I'm just curious, guy. I'm focused on you're working for Bill Clinton and subsequently for Obama. What's the one thing you learned that you could share with this audience in that work specifically?
Yeah, it's there's the theater that you see that is written about and published in periodicals, in dailies, meaning daily newspapers, and that's the drama that is portrayed. And then, I'm an Irving Goffman disciple, the dramaturgical school of sociological thought. There's the drama of presenting oneself in day-to-day life that you think is reality, then backstage there's a whole nother reality. And I would tell you that at that level, now look, okay, Horner was a major, okay, but I had a PhD in Stanford in sociology. And so that was the coin of the realm for me on that effort. And backstage, the deals have been cut.
Yeah.
Backstage, the senior leadership teams of the varying interest groups have already made the deals. And you see that playing out right now, for instance, in Ukraine. And look, I have no, my top secret clearance has expired. My SCI, special compartmentalized information, has expired. I can only surmise that based on my experience with Presidents Clinton and President Obama, specifically for President Obama, it was energy policy, specifically Army energy policy. And then with Mayor Brown and Jacksonville, all three of them I love, by the way. These are really good people. There's the drama that plays up front, and then you get backstage behind the curtain, and that's where the grinding really goes on. That's what I would say, Jeff.
Interesting. And so you relate that, and something I read about what you say and what you do are very different things. And I think that relates so well to culture in any business, right?
Yeah, I think you've nailed it. And essentially, it's a great honor and privilege to work with many of the CEOs and senior leadership teams, whether it's, and I'm talking about clients, whether it's government, private sector, public sector, military, or nonprofits. It truly is an honor to work with them because they're inviting us in as a trusted partner. They're letting us see the warts. This is Gulliver's Travel. You get too close, it doesn't look so pretty. And they mean well. They in fact mean well. What we have is in the consultative practice, the benefit we have is bare attention. Bare attention. We come in with no biases. We come in with no preconceived notions about that business. Now, don't get me wrong, Horner has got suitcases full of biases that I pull with me wherever I go, as we all do. But we can give you as honest a look, if you're willing to receive it, about what's really going on. And when I say that, remember the old American television show, Undercover Boss? Mm-hmm. We've done that. We've been undercover. We've had clients where they've let us in. And oh, that's a blast. It's exhausting, but it's a blast. Most companies aren't willing to do that sort of thing. So we're as near to an undercover boss and honest broker as one can be.
That's great.
Oh, that's interesting. Well, one of the things you said, Donnie, reminded me of the old axiom that, the harder I work, the luckier I get. And so I think a lot of us could probably say that. One of the things that first made us come to you was, about 3 or 4 months ago, Jeff was reading, he was trolling the internet, and he came across this article and he sent it to all of us. And I looked at it and I said, Donnie Horner, I know Donnie Horner. And it was the article that you had written about, on your blog post for Higher Echelon, that you can't change work culture until you understand it. Tell us a little bit more about that. And by the way, the chat appears to be working. Thank you to Lisa Proctor, who sent me instructions on how to do this. So everyone, if you can, and don't forget to change the chat direction to everyone from host and panelist if it's there. So I think we're back in business on the chat. But Donnie, back to my question. Tell us about some kind of, if you would, flesh out a little bit of that article about you can't change culture until you understand what it is.
Yeah, it's, Jeff must have been suffering from insomnia. You probably found
And nothing else to do.
Yeah, 3 o'clock in the morning, and you were looking for a good snooze, and you found there it is. So I hope it cured the insomnia. But that came from work we were doing with a client in the NFL, and I won't say who it was out of respect for them. They hired a new coach, and you hear this frequently. You can substitute new head coach for new CEO, new franchise manager, new whatever that senior leader's title or name is. But this NFL team had hired a new coach, and the ownership and the administration of that National Football League team here in America was really excited. They said, hey, look, this person really understands culture. He's bringing with him a culture of success. He knows what it's about. And I mean, all we have to do, what was insinuated, all we have to do is hire the right guy or gal, bring them in, and they'll paste the culture and drop it right down on this organization, and off we go. And, we listen again with both ears when we're speaking with clients, because the last thing we want to do is solve the wrong problem. We want to make sure it very much is a practice. We're looking to diagnose and making a reasoned assessment of what issues there actually are. And so I said to the administrative team, culture is not transportable, right? You can't bring it with you. I mean, you can hire, maybe the new coach you've just hired understands culture. Maybe, in this case, it was maybe he has been a part of a winning culture. And the franchise we were working with was woefully inept in terms of wins and losses. So, but you don't hire a dude or a dudette and they come in, they drop down their culture and plug and play. Oh, well, what do you mean? And it dawned on me that culture is a word that is so common in vernacular today. It's used probably too much. But the notion, we're going to bring in the right person. We need to change the culture. We need to change the culture, and that person's going to lead the change, et cetera, et cetera. So what we found with that particular client and with others is very well-intentioned, well-meaning individuals who really want high performance. They want to do well in their space. They really don't understand the nuances. And in this case, the nuances of culture. So in this case, there's actually good science. I mean, there's a lot of sound science upon which derived best practices are based. And so my bias, my colleagues that I work with, they know I'm just a drudge and a troll about theory. I love theory. I love science, but in this case, you've got to understand what culture is before you can ever hope to change it, or before you can ever hope to tweak it. So, you go back to the science of culture, and to me, it all starts with Malinowski, late 1800s, early 1900s. He's on islands with tribal, native, indigenous peoples, and he's the undercover boss. He's there, and he's the white guy who shows up and, hey, I just want to hang out and watch what's going on. And so what he found was that, there's all sorts of structural things in these native primitive societies, but they all have a function, whether it's a water jug or whether the structure is sort of euphemistically speaking, a role. People have roles in society. And he came up with this notion, culture is about structure and function. If there's a structure, it must have a function. And those functions are absolutely necessary for the society to thrive. And so that structural functional notion gave way to, successors. Radcliffe Brown followed him and studied. And he said, the structural functional argument, it sort of makes sense, but here's Horner's word for the day. I had to look it up again just to make sure. Tautological. The structural functional school is tautological, meaning it's circular. Well, if a structure has a function and a function has a structure, isn't that just a big circular reference? How smart is that? So Radcliffe Brown says, no, it's really about relationships and the structure of relationships. And it's about who does what when, and it's about, it's about compliance. It's about complying with the established norms and the pecking order and the hierarchies. And so, then you follow that up, you fast forward to Talcott Parsons, and Parsons reads all that literature. And look, we all know that science just inches along. We know this. We know that culture back in the late 1800s, early 1900s, it begins, it goes. Well, Parsons says, it is relational and it is very structured and there is a functional, but it can be taught. You can teach this stuff. The older generations teach it to the new generations. New generations may not like what's being taught, but it's being taught as the way things are done. And then you keep on going. And so I would just say that the beauty of this field, culture and organizational culture, you fast forward all the way to Edgar Schein at MIT and the notion of corporate culture and subcultures. We can derive some solid ways to do business based on that science. And then, today, culture and change go so much hand in hand, whether it's change management or whether you're nibbling around the edges or making monumental changes in companies. That's the work of John Cotter at Harvard and his burgeoning set of literature that goes with that. So the beauty of culture is there is science. There are right ways to go about this. Transportability isn't one. You can't just pick it up and transfer. And there's a series of best practices associated with making it stick. And I'll shut up there because
so Donnie, I want to circle back before we get in. We really want to get into some of the science you were talking about and what we know works and what are maybe some of the best practices, and maybe too, there certainly must be some things that are transportable, I would suggest, right? We could transport certain practices, habits we've learned from other workplaces. But I want to circle back to this because this is a great issue, I think, that we all deal with. You made a comment about how very often organizations or leaders solve the wrong problem, and it's important to solve the right problem. So do you have an example or two of what organizations or leaders tend to do that clearly is an example of that, is an example of them focusing time, energy, resources on the wrong problem when they should be over here? They're actually spending their efforts here.
Yeah, it's a great question, Michael. And the last thing, I'll just start with this. We do not want to be presumptive when we partner with a company. We do not want to be presumptuous. We don't want to come in and presume that we're the smartest guys in the room. We're not. The companies have a really good idea what's going on inside them. And it's a sign of strength and health for companies to reach out for other folks to take a peek. Now, having said that, we find that generally there are three types of clients that invite us in. One is, the most common is, hey Donnie, got this new company. It's a private equity driven company. That's, as soon as they tell you private equity, that's a whole set of assumptions about how business is done. It's much different, for instance, than a mom and pop, family oriented, much different modus operandi than a PE firm. So if you're dealing with a PE firm and they say, hey, we think we know what our issues are. We've got a really good senior leadership team. It's about 7 people, but we've got a couple of folks that just don't play nice in the sandbox. Boy, they get things done. They're movers and shakers, or they might have subject matter expertise or intellectual capital that are just absolutely essential for the company, but they're not collaborative. and they're not nice, or instead of or and, they're not collaborative and they're not nice. And so we think what we need is some executive coaching. Can you coach them up? And can you help them capitalize on their strengths and help them alleviate their weaknesses? And so that's most common. Companies have an idea about what they want. What we find when we get in there, of course, is they're either right or they're incorrect or they're partly right. And so again, that's the most common of those variants, if you will. Then there's the company that says, we're doing well, but we're not doing as well as we should be, and we don't know why. Can you figure it out? Oh, those are a joy to do. They're the most joyful for us, because then we can go heavily into diagnostics, and we can circle back and talk about all the ways you diagnose what's really going on. So those companies basically give you carte blanche to diagnose what the cultural issues are or are not, and then you get a chance to triangulate data and feed it back to them and get their response to it. And then there are the companies, so you get again, first variant is we have a good idea what's going on and we think this is it. Second is we're really not sure. The third is, we think it's X and Y, but we're not sure. Can you also tell us it's not Z? So sort of a hybrid. And what I would say is that, again, companies that are inviting us in, that's a sign of health. It's unusual. Most companies don't want outsiders to come in, and it's a sign of strength and wanting to get better as they transition to high performance. What we often find is we get brought in for, let's say, executive coaching, and we find something else. And so we try to cultivate a trusted partner relationship where, look, we want business. Of course we want business, but we're never going to sell you a product that we don't think you need. So we're going to share observations with you. We're going to tell you what we think in terms of fixes might be. For instance, a company brings you in for executive high performance coaching, and what you see is immense structural issues. True again of geographically dispersed companies that have multitudes of subsidiaries in different locations. Different locations, different culture, different parts of the country, sometimes different parts of the world. And so we see things, and we feed that back to the folks that invite us in, and we say, hey, this is what we're seeing. You got a real language barrier. Folks are telling you this, but the CEO is doing his or her quarterly town hall, and I hate to tell you, 75% of the people in the audience they don't understand English. So and they go,
certainly not at that level.
Yes, or they'll say, well, no, she speaks English very well. Well, it's English as a second language, and but she's not forthcoming about the words you use and the way you communicate. She doesn't want to offend you. And
yeah, I know exactly what I can say that I can speak Spanish as a second language, and I can do a lot in Spanish, but I couldn't have a philosophical discussion in Spanish because there's just a different level there. But I think it's interesting when you say that people bring you in for executive coaching because maybe it's a personality issue or they think it's a personality issue with the CEO or another senior leader, and they want you to kind of rub off some of the rough spots. And it turns out that that's not, in fact, the issue. It could be something like what you said.
Yeah, no question. I mean, our bias is always to do what I would call thorough assessment, and thorough diagnosis up front.
Mm-hmm.
One of the beauties of our profession is we have to stay very current with the literature. I mean, there's things being published every day. We all know that it takes about 18 months for something to get into print. And when I say get into print, a book chapter, we're writing a new book chapter on organizational culture. It's a derivative of something that was published about 10 years ago. Those proofs were sent in a year ago. It's coming out in October. So my point is, we're always trolling and looking, just as Jeff was doing, What's new in culture? What's going on? What's the literature say? What's the research being published? And, to that point, there's been a lot of new research on collaboration and building senior leadership teams. And it just reaffirms the notion. It's Heidi Gardner's work at Harvard. And Heidi basically said—
Somebody has talked about her. Someone else has talked about her on this show, and I can't remember who. So yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, it's all about collaboration. It's all about getting superstars to play nicely with one another. And essentially what Heidi says is, you may be right, the superstars may not be playing nicely with one another, and you do want them to collaborate. Make sure you don't skip the diagnostic phase. Make sure you don't skip the assessment phase. And so that current work that's been out for the last, 18 months or so. And I think she has a book coming out or just released. And it just reaffirms the notion that you got to make sure you're diagnosing the problems properly so that you can come up with some reasonable solutions.
Donnie, one of the solutions to the lag time issue with research that everybody might want to just note and take advantage of is I get all my research from Twitter because it's in real time. There's some hard-hitting scientific data.
Wikipedia as well.
I got to tell you.
Wikipedia as well. Donnie, during one of my 3 a.m. perusals of the internet, I found another article that you wrote on change, which is my hot topic as well. And one of the things I found interesting, and you were just skirting around it just now, is that one of the things you suggested why change management doesn't work was because you need to form, I think you called it a guiding coalition. I call it, your disciples, same thing. But can you talk to that? I mean, when we're talking about change and the resistance to change, and by the way, that article I really love because you didn't distinguish between change and disruptive change. You said all change is disruptive, which I adhere to as well.
Love that.
But I'd really like to know more about that guiding coalition that you talked about and kind of dumb it down for people like me. What are you talking about? And any organization has to happen with that.
Yeah, well, remember, I had to dumb it down for myself first, Jeff. Remember, I'm not that good. And look, guiding coalition isn't my term. I wish I were smart enough to have come up with it. It's John Cotter's work. And he coined that phrase. And look, we're all looking for the template. The problems we're encountering have typically been solved or addressed by someone else, albeit some have been addressed well, others not so well. So when we look at change, there's some wonderful models, the ADCAR models out there, from ProSci, there's others. But the literature goes back to Cotter. And remember, Cotter's a disciple of Schein. And in academics, there's a lot of friction between academics. Let's just be really honest. I mean, a lot of competition, intellectual competition.
By the way, speakers as well. So just so you know.
Yeah.
Of course. I mean, except for you all, everybody, Jen,
Exactly.
we all know. But so Cotter's at Harvard at the same time Chris Argyris is at Harvard, and Argyris is coming up with the notion of theories in use. We all bump around with ways of doing business, theories in use. You and I would call them scripts about that get activated from time to time. So they have this intellectual competition going on. I mean, and right down Massachusetts Avenue, from Cambridge Square to Kendall Square, from Harvard to MIT, there's Edgar Schein, and so they're all bouncing ideas. So Cotter comes up with, the culture stuff makes sense. And I want to come back to the friction associated with change, which is it's all about learning anxiety and survival anxiety. If I somehow get off topic, I'd love to come back to that. But John's reading this literature. He's listening to Chris Argyris. He's having dinner with Edgar Schein, and he says, okay, there's steps. And there's steps to how to go about this. How do we change things? And look, anytime we change anything, it's a culture change. Anytime we change anything, no matter how small, because it affects practices, normative behaviors, assumptions about what's right, assumptions about what's wrong. Culture is essentially a compliance business. It's about what is tolerated and what's not.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So he comes up with this idea that, look, CEOs, senior leadership team, you can't delegate this. You got to own the change, okay? But it's not enough. And so who do you get to help you? Well, you can call them change champions. You can call them a guiding coalition. That's where the notion of guiding coalition came from. Who can you enlist as the senior leader of an organization, of a team, of a group, fill in the blank? Who can you enlist that has enough, let's call it gravitas, social and organizational gravitas, that people will listen to you? And we all know that there are people who are formally in charge and there are people who are really in charge. You know, the formal structures sometimes just don't match the informal structures. So Connor would tell you that when you form your change champions, the folks that are going to help you implement this change, you have to take special note of who's really in charge. And when the rank and file hear that Smith is on the team and Smith says it, Smith might not be the supervisor, but Smith's been here 28 years and Smith's seen enough bad ideas. So, oh, geez, if Smith is really behind this change, then it must really be good. So forming that team, that guiding coalition, to augment the formal authority that the CEO has for implementing it, it's a big deal.
I believe Life Cereal first came up with that principle with the Mikey likes it ads. If Mikey likes it.
It's true.
That's
It's
a great
beautiful
comparison. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
We thought
I
that
agree.
was you as a kid, Mike.
Yeah. Mike, was that you? No, that kid had too many
No.
freckles. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's fascinating. Yeah, that's great. So one of the things that you also talk about is the diagnosis. We have like 5 minutes left, but how does somebody go in and diagnose a culture? What's the process look like?
Yeah, obviously the first part is you got to be invited in. You know, this has to be something that the folks that in positions of authority, they invite you in. And
So that says already that there is an interest in culture.
absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. It's a happy face invitation, you know, hey, we want you to come in and tell us what you see. And so we start at the top. You know, we'll do a structured process interview we start with an interview protocol, questions protocol. We do a deep dive with the CEO one-on-one, nobody else in the room. Normally, generally, we like to have 2 facilitators or interviewers. Sometimes we'll have a third person on the phone, and the person on the phone is doing nothing or online like this, taking notes. And so after that 2 hours, you get, wow, okay, this is fascinating. And then you do the same questions, same process, the same protocols. Then you do it with smaller groups of the senior leadership team. So you might do the CEO by him or herself. You do the senior leadership team, groups of 3 and 5, no bigger than that. Same questions, same diagnosis, same protocol, same length of time. Often you get markedly different conversations.
Donnie, we've got very limited time here. Just curious, is there a specific question or 2 that you could share with folks that you find really kind of gets to the heart of a lot of this quickly?
Yeah, the first thing we ask is, what's the purpose of the company? Why are you in business? You know, why are you here? What's your reason? What's your purpose? Then we ask, you know, again, what are your values? What do you value? What, at the end of the day, you will tolerate this because it's consistent. Tell me what your values are. And then where do you see the company going? And, you know, between a discussion of mission, vision, values, you see is the beginnings of a strategic plan. What's your strategy? Then we'll say part of the next process, part of the next step is, can we see your strategic plan? Well, if they just hashed out for you what their mission, vision, values were, and they say, oh, well, we don't have one. Or as some clients said, oh, you know, we got like 3 or 4 of them. Which one do you want? So that immediately, that contrast gives you powerful insight as to where there may be disconnects. And that's what we're looking for, Michael. We're looking for gaps. We're looking for space and daylight between what you say you do, what you do, what you tell clients and customers and would-be clients and customers you do, what shows up on your website versus out on the shop floor, what's actually going on. We're looking for mismatches. between those levels of analysis culturally.
So that's a great example, probably for you, I guess, of a red flag, right? Where you're kind of going, okay,
You
that
say
tells
one
that
thing,
tells us a
but
lot.
doing another.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah. Is there another one or two things you could quickly describe that would be a big red flag for you, where you'd go, okay?
Yeah, well, another one is, sort of the secret sauce of culture is HR, because HR, who you recruit, who you select, who you retain, who you promote, who you deselect, those are powerful indicators as to who the company is. And so we might ask you, what's your perfect hire? What's your perfect hire? And in most cases, they can articulate it. We then ask this question to the HR director. How does your interview process and selection process reflect what your perfect hire is? And the vast majority is, I'm not sure we really interview for that.
Right. There's just no connection at all, is there?
No connection. Or the next question, how does your evaluation and your performance criteria match what you think is the perfect employee based on your mission, vision, values? And you take a look at the assessment process versus what they say they value. The vast majority of companies have no connection between the performance evaluation process and what they really value. And so we're left, we're finished with our first couple sessions with our companies. And, my colleagues and I will sit around at dinner and go, is there any wonder why they're having problems? Is there any wonder why turnover is 35%, year over year, and why? And then you do the calculations of what's it cost to recruit, select, retain, promote people in a constant churn. Wouldn't it be better just to recruit the right people the first time? So HR is sort of the secret sauce.
Did you ever take those questions down to frontline?
Oh yeah. What we try to do, as we go from the CEO to the senior leadership team, we go out and interview. We also do the same sort of process structured interviews, and we do thematic analysis. We have independent coders who do a word analysis of what we find in our interviews. When we take that to the rank and file, it is not uncommon to get something completely different.
That's what I was going to ask.
Oh, yeah.
Completely different. And again, we're looking for daylight. We're looking for gaps.
Right.
Yeah.
We could do this all day.
We could. Fascinating, except that we only have a minute and a half left before the Zoom machine is going to suddenly shut off. So, Donnie, this has been great. I knew it would be. I feel like I have been intellectually stimulated through this as we've talked about culture and your view of it. We really appreciate it so much. One of the things that we always like to remind our audience of is that you can have the three of us plus Sanjay come to you in person or virtually and have a discussion with your organization about culture as well. So get in touch with us about that.
By the way, Richard, that will be after I read another one of Donnie's articles, so I can steal
That's right. Yeah, exactly. After we read, Donnie just keeps feeding this stuff. You should really go to his company's website, which is higherechelon.com. Is that correct? Higher, H-I-G-H-E-R, echelon.com. And I hope that everybody will be back with us on August the 10th, 2 weeks from today, when our special guest will be Jason Mudd, the founder and CEO of Axia PR. The reason we invited Jason to come on, Jason is a successful entrepreneur and an operator of a small-ish business that he started as a one-person company maybe 20 years ago. And I think there's a lot we can learn from Jason about the culture that he has built and helped to support in his company. Not a huge corporation, fairly small company, very successful. So we hope that everybody.
I vote for having Donnie back.
I do too, because we got a lot more to explore here.
I don't know that you want to lower your standards that far.
No.
Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you,
Thank
Donnie.
you, Donnie. Appreciate your time and wisdom. Thank you, everyone, for joining us as always.
We apologize to everybody about the chat. We'll get it fixed for next time.
Yeah, we sure will. And as we always say, see you every other Wednesday.
Bye, guys.
Bye everyone.